Hello everyone, Jock here, and today is a special episode of the BlueScoop where we go over all the latest news, updates, releases, and even a sprinkle of speculation on the... So, the show that every Sonic fan has been waiting for is finally out. I myself have been waiting for this TV show to release because I'm a really huge fan of the Sonic movieverse. It's crazy how we've gone from hands to gloves in such a short period of time. We've seen clips plastered all over the internet, name drops, advertisements, and so much more on this show. And now that the show is finally out, it's aight. Now look, I'm not gonna say that it's bad. It's definitely not the worst show, but damn, is there some problems here. Episode 1. I'm not gonna lie, this might be the best episode in the entire series. The start is absolutely perfect. Knuckles created a whole obstacle course akin to the games. He even put a custom goalpost at the end of the course, which is really cool. And the comedy as well is great. I found myself laughing out loud throughout this entire episode, especially the parts where Knuckles was terrorizing the house workers and trying to train a dog on top of the roof. It's very over the top and very funny. I really like this take of Knuckles, a sort of fish out of water character that doesn't really understand how to integrate with this new society, which makes sense considering how his whole life he was conditioned to be a warrior, so that's all he really knows. I mean, bro made a whole Game of Thrones type throne inside of his living room. He kidnapped the damn mailman. Dude looks terrified. So I think that they got Knuckles down pat for this show. Sonic and Tails also make a small appearance, although Tails doesn't really talk as much or has really much of a role. It's mostly Sonic for the first 20 minutes, which is honestly pretty fair. However, Sonic's only role in this show is to pretty much give Knuckles a pep talk, be sort of like, how Tom was to him in the movies. Sort of like, tell him to mellow out and take a break from trying to be a warrior. And, of course, Knuckles doesn't listen, hence why he made a throne in the living room and got grounded for it. So in his time of boredom, he calls out to the spirits for guidance, and his father... Is it his father? Is it not? I'm not sure. You know what? Chief Pacakamak, voiced by Christopher Lloyd, of all people. And look, I am not upset about the casting choice. I love Christopher Lloyd. I loved him in the Back to the Future movies. But when I think of Pacakamak, an old, maybe senile geezer is not what comes to mind. I mean, he's supposed to be this warriors of warriors type guy. He's supposed to have conviction in his voice.
We need those 7 emeralds to give us total power. We must get that emerald.
But yeah, not my first choice. Pac comes down from the heavens and tells Knuckles that he needs to train Wade Whipple in the ways of the Echidna. And I'm guessing that bowling was an integral part of that training, considering that's all they do for the majority of the show. Wouldn't be the first time an ancient civilization in Sonic's universe had an unusual hobby, but then I realized we're dealing with alternate dimensional space rats here. But yeah, Wade is training for a bowling tournament that is supposed to be held in Reno, Las Vegas. However, he got booted off a team by his leader, Jack Sinclair, after getting beaten by an 8-year-old girl, who he then gets replaced by. So it's not really looking good for Wade, which leads Knuckles into helping Wade become a quote-unquote warrior. I am not gonna lie, I do not care that much about the bowling plotline, and I do not care that much for the human characters. I mean, I get why they're in the show, I get why there's a bowling sort of subplot, they gotta do something to keep the plot going, but I feel like there were so many other, ways they could have pushed the narrative instead of just having it directly have something to do with human characters, right? Because I don't give two fucks about Jack Sinclair or this 8-year-old girl. I am here for the Echidna, whose name is in the title of the show. The only human character that I should be caring about is Wade, and he should be the only human character that has a prominent role in the show, aside from the villains. And I'm only scratching the surface on the human problem in this show. It gets worse. way worse. But yeah, speaking of villains, the show has their version of Scratch and Grounder in the form of 2 rogue gun agents, Kid Cudi, and a scary British lady named Willoughby, who are hell-bent on capturing Knuckles. And if you're wondering why I called Kid Cudi just Kid Cudi, is because he literally doesn't have a name. He's nameless, look it up. But yeah, these 2 are working for a guy by the name of The Buyer. Real creative name, guys. Could have came up with anything, but you guys decided to call him The Buyer. I mean, I'm pretty sure half of the Sonic fan base would have just been fine with Snively, but yeah, let's just call him The Buyer. Let's go with that. I'm sorry for being a Sonic fan again. But yeah, these guys, they want Knuckles and they're trying to steal his power, which they kind of do. You see, while Wade was busy showing Knuckles the art of bowling, the 2 warped through a portal and started ambushing Knuckles with quill technology. The Buyer had been collecting pieces of Knuckles' quills and had been manufacturing them into weapons of mass destruction. Sounds like a certain somebody we used to know, right? Which is ironic considering that the Buyer used to work for this certain somebody. But yeah, Knuckles and the 2 villains go at it, and there's even a funny little callback to the second movie where Kid Cudi was telling Knuckles, "Do you think I need your power?" I thought that was a pretty cool reference. And the fight itself was really good. Seeing Knuckles completely wipe the floor with these 2 no problem was enjoyable to watch. And I could say that for a lot of the fight scenes in this show, especially with Knuckles, of course. They were all well choreographed and animated, and even Wade had some highlights during a few fight scenes in the show. But unfortunately, Knuckles gets captured, which leads us into episode 2, where Wade needs to find a way to save Knuckles and defeat the 2 rogue agents. I will say I really do enjoy the dynamic between Kid Cudi's character and Willoughby. I think that they have a lot of charisma and cartooniness that makes them enjoyable to watch. I think someone said this already, but they kind of give me a lot of Agent Stone vibes. It's like they're 2 halves of the same person. One being his goofy, more dopey side, which would be Kid Cudi, and the other is more cunning and methodical, side of Agent Stone's character, which would be Willoughby. I like these 2 a lot, especially in episode 2 and in the show moving forward. Episode 2 takes place at the Ice Cap Resort. Ah, you thought it was really gonna be the Ice Cap, huh? Well, you were mistaken. I really enjoyed this episode a lot for the same reasons I liked episode 1. The humor was on point, the dynamic between Wade and Knuckles was on point, and even Kid Cudi and Willoughby were as good as ever. I really enjoyed the segment where Wade saved Knuckles from these 2. It was super over the top, dude was all dressed up, came out of a sports car doing flips and blowing up the place. It was insane. I mean, how could one imagine all of that and mess up on every single angle? It's wild. I'm joking. I thought Wade's whole imaginary plan and rescue was entertaining, but honestly, I thought that his actual plan and rescue was just as funny, if not funnier. Dude was standing in front of that poor worker just daydreaming about saving Knuckles. You know, I realize this isn't very far off from an actual Sonic fan. Joking. Or am I? But yeah, Knuckles is sitting in his cage and is also daydreaming about crushing both rogue agents. I really do like the moment where Willoughby tries to threaten Knuckles and gives us a speech saying, "I know everything about you, but you know nothing about me" type thing. And now that I'm saying that out loud, it kind of sounds like the line that was in the OVA. "You might know everything I'm gonna do, but that's not saying because I know everything you're gonna do." Strange, isn't it? I'm sorry. It makes me really more interested in this character and her connections with Gunn and Dr. Robotnik. Really wish they would have delved a little deeper into those categories, but alas, that is the only 3-dimensional thing we will get out of this character, unfortunately. But yeah, Wade is outside of the ice cap ready to enact his plan, and I just love how shit hits the fan so goddamn fast as soon as he knocks his knuckles together. No pun intended. Everything explodes, its car catches on fire, shit just goes array, and it's not looking good. On top of that, the rogue gun agents got wind of what was going on outside, while Wade accidentally flew on inside. Embarrassing! But yeah, Wade fights the 2 and somehow wins, cause plot. And Knuckles glides off a hilltop with Wade on his back. Also an ET reference. Thought that was a nice touch. But yeah, after escaping, they steal a car and they get a bite to eat and talk about their feelings. More specifically, Wade asking Knuckles to rate him from 1 to warrior, and then finding out that he's a wanted fugitive with a bounty on his head. Really just like, turn the dial up on Wade a bit. And then finally having to lay low at, oh my god. We will get to that. Episode 2 was pretty good, and I didn't really have much issues with it. However, from episode 3 to 6, the real problems with the show really start to show. I want to reiterate and say that I do like Wade's character. I thought he was entertaining in the movies, and I think he's a great foil to Knuckles' more stoic and brute character. But when you give someone like this more screen time than they need and more backstory than the actual main character, that's when it becomes an issue. It really started at the beginning when they decided to make the focus of the show on Wade's bowling career. Something that should have been a one-done thing. A little gag that adds something to the character. Or even Wade's backstory about how his father left him at TJ Maxx. Why did they decide to continue these storylines? Out of all directions they could have taken the Knuckles show in, why did you decide to take these paths? A path that has nothing to do with Knuckles at all. This is the human problem I was talking about in the beginning. They constantly hijack every movie and every show that they're in, and I get it. Budgets are budgets. You need some type of filler so that the animators can catch a break, but at least have the human characters do something to benefit the echidna, not benefit the side character who's supposed to be a side character only. I thought that we had complained enough about this to Paramount. That's why Sonic 2 had less human characters and more of Sonic. But I guess not, considering the direction the series is heading. And oh boy, episode 3 has a lot of issues. Wade's family. I don't really care for them as much. I don't hate Wade's mom. I don't think they're annoying or anything. Well, other than maybe Wade's sister, but I think that's intentional. I just think they didn't need to be here, or at least they didn't need a whole episode centered around them. You see, this is where the Knuckles show really becomes the Wade show, because Knuckles is essentially in the passenger seat, both literally and figuratively. Also, canonically Jewish. Yes, Jewish Knuckles was the last thing on my bingo card, but at this point, I shouldn't be surprised. They even made a Holocaust joke, because that's what we need in our Knuckles show. A bleak reminder of a dark period in human history. I mean, the jokes for this episode were probably the weakest for me. I think the only time I laughed out loud was when Wade's sister was making fun of the bounty hunter, or that random goat showing up during Wade's traumatic flashback. Yes, my humor is broken. No, I don't care about fixing it. But other than that, not really much laughed for me. It was kind of weird too, because they had a lot of innuendos this episode. One where Knuckles was literally getting violated, or Wade having a little too much fun with his cardboard cutout. Just kind of weird, at least for this type of franchise. And trust me, we don't need any more of that here. But yeah, Wade and his family have a nice little Shabbat dinner. Not really, since most of it is centered around Wade's family. But yeah, Wade and his family have a nice little Shabbat dinner and get ambushed by a group of bounty hunters. And then we get this whole fight scene with Knuckles and Wade's mom kicking these dudes' asses and shit. And that's really the episode. I feel like I would enjoy it a lot if it wasn't a Knuckles show. I don't think Wade's family is the worst, but I feel like their roles should have been minimal and not carried throughout the rest of this episode. Because the mom and the sister have a lot of charisma, the mother more than the sister, and their dynamic with Wade made for some funny moments. But I feel like, again, they're moving away from the actual character that we paid $11.99 a month to see. This whole Shabbat dinner subplot should have been entirely scrapped. It's again just more unnecessarily filler that doesn't really benefit the story or the show itself. The only thing that it's benefiting is Wade as a character. And I will get into that later, because episode 4 is just what the fuck. The day after the events of episode 3, Wade gets up bright and early, house still broken and beaten up, but he's making the most of it, until he walks outside and gets dragged away by his ex-best friend, Jack Sinclair. Did I forget to mention that he's a bounty hunter? They kind of just threw that in during the first episode, but yeah, Wade gets captured by Jack and he is put into this cage with electrical bars. You're probably wondering, maybe Knuckles will come in and swoop in to save him. Nope. Nope. Instead, Knuckles chooses to leave him behind as a way to test his skills as a warrior, because that plotline is definitely going somewhere. I have a theory. Maybe the reason for why Knuckles is so absent in this episode is because budgets will be budgets. You see, Knuckles only makes 4 appearances this episode. I'm not joking. 3 in person where he's standing, talking, and driving a motorcycle, and 1 where he's literally phoning in his lines. You can't make this shit up. So after Wade and Jack's painful conversation about friendship and making Susie's parents uncomfortable with the karaoke, Wade calls Knuckles, begging for him to help, and Knuckles is like, just meditate, dude. And so he does, not before Jack shocks him unconscious and is sending him to a dreamlike world that bears a striking resemblance to the bowling alley from the first episode. There, he gets startled by Chief Pacamac, who makes another appearance for this episode. Pretty much, he's here to tell the story of where Knuckles got his abilities from so that it could help him escape from his confinement. How do they do that? How do they explain that? Through a low-budget, Flash Gordon-esque song performance. Just why? Was the budget for this episode so low that they couldn't have done it anyway else? I felt like this could have been a perfect opportunity to seriously go into depth into Knuckles' past. A past that a lot of people like myself are very invested into. But no, they decided to treat it like some cheesy over-the-top showcase. And I know the Sonic series is known for being extremely cheesy, but at least in the games they treated the extinction of the echidnas with some level of seriousness. Hell, they treated it perfectly in movie 2. Why didn't y'all just carry that same tone into the show? I'll tell you why. Because Jeff Fowler isn't even the director of this show. He directed episode 1, and that was the only episode that felt like the movies. Everything else was whoever they could find, I guess. Also, the Flames of Disaster? I hope it's not that Flames of Disaster, and oh my gosh, it's that Flames of Disaster. Why is this motherfucker here? You telling me we couldn't get Rouge, but we got Iblis. You telling me that we got Iblis before Shadow the Hedgehog. Come on. Y'all are playing at this point. But yeah, this segment isn't even the worst thing. It's edited and filmed pretty well, but we didn't need this. It felt like it was here because they didn't feel like paying any more money for more Knuckles scenes and more Idris Elba. It also went on way too long. Like, this whole segment was literally the majority of this episode. We didn't need it to be, 15 to 20 minutes long for Wade to figure out that a warrior's strength comes from the heart. But I guess it did, because Wade is slow. But yeah, Wade figures out where his strength comes from and busts out the cage and lands like he's a goddamn Power Ranger, and challenges Jack to a duel, which he quickly wins after cutting Jack's hair and then taking his jacket and his hat. Then Wade returns home to his family with Knuckles looking on proudly. The episode ends with Knuckles driving the motorcycle for some reason. Guess they needed something for the trailers. And unfortunately, Wade's family is following behind them as they make their ways towards Reno, Nevada for the bowling competition. Episode 4 was a trip. Not a very fun one. Out of all the episodes so far, this one might be the most underwhelming. I will give credit where credit's due. The cinematography and set designs and costumes were pretty nice. But even then, it didn't fix the issues of the episode. It's crazy how this whole show has just been about Wade and his bowling career and his backstory. Even when we got an episode centered around Knuckles and his past, it was played by Wade. The payoff was just underwhelming. I didn't feel gratified by Wade finally finding the warrior in him because it didn't feel earned to me. It felt like the opposite of the hero's journey. Or more like the hero's sidekick journey. And this would have been the worst episode for me if episode 5 didn't exist. Holy shit, Reno baby. This might be the worst episode in the series. And for one reason. Enter Pistol Pete. Remember Wade's dad? Remember the one that left him at TJ Maxx? Yeah, that's him. Oh my gosh. I just can't with this. I just like what is this? Who in their right mind thought this was a good idea? It's bad enough that Knuckles was benching his own show, but now this. I can't take it anymore. I just can't. Is it even worth going on to episode 6? Is it really worth having to spend 2 episodes with this Mad Mod lookalike? Actually, you know what? That comparison is disrespectful to Mad Mod because Pistol Pete is just in a unique experience. He needs no comparison. Originally, Pistol Pete was revealed in episode 3 when Wade showed Knuckles a poster of him in his room. I wish he would have just stayed a poster, but I guess they really needed him to steal the show. They really took the storyline of Wade's dad and turned the dial way up. The story of Knuckles has long been building up to this moment of Wade finally meeting his dad. But Wade is shy. He doesn't want to talk to his dad. So Knuckles is like, it's okay, I'll help you out. It makes Wade recite his words like it's an episode of The Impractical Jokers. Somehow that works and Pete realizes that Wade is his long-lost son. And then Knuckles gives Wade the thumb up and disappears until the end of the episode. At this point, I'm not surprised. Remember Kid Cudi and Willoughby? I certainly didn't. I completely forgot these two were even in the show. They were gone for almost like half the episodes, but now they're back and got captured by the buyer, who is not very happy about their failure to capture Knuckles. I don't know about you guys, but I think he wants to kill them. He goes on about how he used to work for Gunn under Robotnik's division, and after Robotnik's recent change, they wanted to cover up anything and anyone associated with the Doctor. And I can assure you that that cover-up was not a measly pink slip. So he had no choice but to go underground selling weapons of mass destruction on the black market. So he's got a justified reason for doing what he's doing, which makes me wish we could have seen a little bit more of him. His backstory and motivations are already spectacular. All they really need to do is give him more screen time to develop. But no, I guess three-dimensional villains are kryptonite in Knuckles, I guess. Willoughby has also been wronged by Gunn and promises that she and Kid Cudi will capture Knuckles by any means necessary. So the buyer lets them go and just do that. And the rest of the episode is literally a bowling tournament highlight reel. I'll give it to them. It was edited really well. But again, we did not need this at all. After the tournament finished its first day, Wade and Pete catch up on lost time and have conversations about the birds and the bee, and then Pete invites Wade to come to his giant penthouse suite. However, when this conversation was going down, Wade's mom overheard the conversation and confronted Wade about it. She essentially said, Pete bad, and then Wade was like, Pete good. Then she went into the elevator and then got caught by Kid Cudi. Then Wade comes up to Pete's suite, excited to spend more and more time with his dad, and he's a double crosser. Wow. Didn't see that one coming. The British person is evil trope runs rampant in this show. But yeah, Wade's mom and sister were captured by Cudi and Willoughby and forced Wade to give up Knuckles or else they would unalive his mom and sister. So Wade had no choice but to do that. So he goes up to Knuckles' room and tells him that there's a surprise from up in his dad's suite. And Knuckles, being the naive dope that he is, agrees and goes up with Wade. Hat and everything, by the way. But before Wade gets into the elevator, he makes an excuse and lets Knuckles go up to face his doom without him. You know, there's something so poetic, so ironic about this scene. It's like a metaphor for this entire show. But yeah, Wade walks away all sad, knowing that he threw his only friend under the bus. And that's episode 5. I didn't like episode 5. I think it might possibly be the worst episode in the series for me. I didn't like Wade's overly British father. I thought the bowling scene was dragged and unnecessary. And the fact that this episode, again, just like the others, barely had Knuckles be the main character, just put the piss on the shit cake. So yeah, finally, we are at the last episode of the series, and it's not that bad. I mean, it's still bad, but like, not as bad as episode 5. Of course, it still had the bowling stuff taking up like half the episode, but at least there was still more action scenes with Knuckles. You know, a show is fucking up when I have to beg to see the main character make an appearance. He's really living up to the and Knuckles thing. But yeah, the episode starts out with Kid Cudi and Willoughby patiently waiting to destroy Knuckles as soon as he gets out of the elevator. And when the elevator opens, they go to town shooting up what they think is Knuckles, but is actually that ugly red suit guy from the beginning of episode 5 I forgot to mention. Hopefully he wasn't in that suit when they shot up into the elevator, or else this would be a very, very dark turn of events. But that's not important. They get surprised by Knuckles, who is hiding at the top of the elevator, and a fight between them ensues. And it is a beatdown. Knuckles was mopping the floor with these two. Kid Cudi better hope he don't get into no rap beef, because they will be using these clips if he starts losing. But yeah, Wade swoops in to save his family, and his sister, of course, is just refusing to be saved by him, so she tries to dislocate her thumb. Cool. Anyways, Willoughby tries one last ditch effort to capture Knuckles by shooting the ring portal she used at the beginning of the show, but it fails as Knuckles punches both of the rings, which opens up 2 giant portals that start sucking into each other. Willoughby and Kid Cudi get caught in the middle of these portals and get sucked in. And die. I mean, these 2 portals were literally warping into each other. I don't know how any of these 2 would have survived something like that. Which means that these 2 would probably be the first deaths in the Sonic movieverse, unless they went to some secret ring dimension. Maybe they got warped into the blue sphere zone and had to play it for eternity or something. But I'm rambling too long on these 2. Knuckles saved the day, but wait, there's still a bowling competition, and Wade needs to get there before his dad wins by forfeit. Also, Wade's sister dislocated her thumb, just for anyone that wanted to know. Gross. But yeah, Wade and his dad go toe and toe in the tournament, and Knuckles is outside watching it all go down on some TV while he's eating some bread. Not before he hears something going on outside and starts to investigate. However, when he makes it outside, he gets grabbed by the buyer in a giant mech suit. The main villain of the show and the main character finally meet, and he mops the floor with Knuckles. Hopefully Knuckles doesn't get into any rap battles. I'm not making that joke again. Moreover, while this is going on, Wade and his dad are in their final round. Wade's dad messes up the strike, and Wade wins by getting the strike. But as soon as he gets to enjoy his victory, Knuckles crashes into the building, which causes everyone to evacuate the premises. Wade walks outside to witness Knuckles getting his power sucked out of him by the buyer, and the next scene I thought was pretty well done, although not really earned. Wade grabs one of the Quill Power gloves, and with the help of his family, starts chucking a bunch of bowling balls at the buyer. While he's doing that, he gives a speech about how Knuckles taught him to be a warrior, and how Earth is Knuckles' new home. Fortunately for Wade, the second he runs out of bowling balls, Knuckles wakes up and starts fighting the buyer. Then another cool moment ensues when Knuckles takes all of his power back and unleashes the flames of disaster on the buyer. And he absolutely goes to town with this guy. I know I've said that a million times, but this, nah, this ain't a town. He goes on the city with this guy, bruh. He goes on a fucking state on this guy, bruh, because he doesn't even give bro a moment to breathe. Literally, Knuckles, with Wade's help, throws a giant metal ball off the roof of the bowling building and chucks it at the buyer, unaliving him. Knuckles out here collecting bodies. He does not play. Then after all of that, we switch back to Wade's dad, unfortunately, and he's trying to steal the trophy. I did think the scene when Susie was walking away with her parents while telling on Pete was funny. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, Pete gets punched in the face by Wade's mom. Wade and Knuckles do a victory freeze frame jump and drive off into the sunset. And that is Knuckles. Or should I say, Wade and Knuckles. Because that's what it should have been called. Look, I don't like to be negative and a stickler about these kinds of things. I understand that there needs to be some compromises when you're adapting some things, and you can't always get everybody's expectations the way they want it to be. But it's so evident that this show was just that. I felt like I left this show knowing more about Wade than about Knuckles, which should be fine if this was his show, but it's not. It's Knuckles' show. Knuckles should have been the one to get the most development. Knuckles should have been the one to get the most screen time, not Wade. It just doesn't make any sense. I kind of want to go back to that quote that I explained in the last episode of the Blue Scoop. Toby Ashker told us that his team would only produce character spin-offs like Knuckles if they felt like they had stories about the cast worth telling. He also said in a quote that we're not just making stuff to make stuff. So after reading all of that and really soaking up the juices of these quotes, what made this story worth telling? What did we really learn from the show other than Wade as a character? I'll tell you what we learned. That Knuckles is really good at being player 2. I've never seen a character get benched so hard in his own soul like this for so long. He was practically Scooby-Doo. Name in the title is furry, talks, and gets sidelined by the rest of the cast of characters. They missed a huge opportunity to really dive deep into Knuckles' past. We could have learned more about his childhood, his connection to the Echidna tribe, and the growing pains of being the last Echidna in the universe. But we didn't. Instead, we had to watch Wade train to become a warrior and win some stupid bowling tournament. Was this story really worth telling? Was it really worth creating one of the worst Sonic human characters since Chris Thorndyke? Was it really worth selling your soul to all these advertisement companies? Was it really worth it? I guess it was, considering how it's one of Paramount's top grossing shows on its streaming platform and is critically acclaimed across all boards. So safe to say it was a success for the company. But for us Sonic fans, we were left with we were left $11.99 broker and disappointed. I'm disappointed. With how the Sonic movies had been going, I had no doubt that this show would live up to the hype. But unfortunately, it just didn't live up to it to me. It had good moments, and Idris Elba did a great job portraying Knuckles, and everybody else in the cast did a great job doing what they needed to do. But Knuckles, we just needed more of him. I don't think we needed this. In fact, nobody asked for this show. It's like we got a free sample from a Chinese restaurant and it got ripped out of our hands before we even got a chance to bite. If this is the standard of the Sonic movie TV verse going forward, then I'm scared. Knuckles show is a 6 for me. Needs more Knuckles.